before dawn, the forest sounded like wet paper being torn open. Rain had come in the night and lingered in the leaves, so every movement in the canopy sent another shiver of drops to the ground. At Nkuba Primate Rescue, the corrugated roofs ticked and drummed as water slid from gutter to barrel. A diesel generator coughed, steadied, coughed again. Someone in the kitchen banged enamel mugs. Beyond the staff compound, the ape enclosures waited in grey morning light, concrete and steel softened by climbing vines. Todd Cooper had stopped trying to control. He stood at the outer fence of Habitat C with a clipboard tucked under one arm and a thermos in his hand, watching Safi braid fresh branches into a sleeping platform she would not use until evening. She moved with the concentration of a carpenter and the caution of someone who expected to be interrupted. Every vine was tested before she put weight on it. Every edge was reinforced. She paused, looked toward Todd through the mesh, then went back to work. "Third nest this week in the same corner," said Aline, one of the younger keepers, stepping up beside him. "She ignores the tire swing. She ignores the hammock. She likes the ground there." Todd made a note. "Keep the substrate dry. Add more broadleaves by noon." Aline hesitated. "You still want me logging the stones?" "Everyone." She gave him the same look he got from half his staff on busy days. Respect mixed with mild disbelief. "You think it means something." "I think everything means something," Todd said, "especially with her." Safi had arrived 11 months earlier in a confiscation transfer from the river corridor east of Kisangani. Emaciated, rope scars around both wrists, sedation burns on her thigh, and a right canine chipped down to the pulp where she had bitten at chain. She had not made eye contact for days. Then, slowly, she began the same ritual each evening. Build nest, turn 3 circles, settle. And each morning, before feeding, search the enclosure for smooth river pebbles the keepers used in drainage channels, carrying them one by one into her sleeping area. No one had taught her that at Nkuba. No other gorilla did it. She sorted by size, set them in clusters, broke clusters apart, started again. Sometimes she held a pebble to her chest for long stretches, rocking without sound. Provincial visitors called it odd but harmless. A district commissioner had once laughed and told Todd, "Your gorilla likes decorations." Todd had answered too quickly, "She likes control." The commissioner had not liked that answer. The sanctuary board had liked it less. By 7, the workday had teeth. Intake records had to be filed. Feed deliveries were short again. Cassava prices had jumped. 2 perimeter posts needed rewiring because last week's storm had dropped a branch through the line. An education group from Maseki Primary was supposed to arrive Friday and might cancel because parents were circulating another rumor. The rescue center was keeping wild giants that would someday break out and raid gardens. Rumors stuck because people were scared, and people were scared because fear traveled faster than facts. Todd understood that. He had sat in village meetings where men who had never seen a live gorilla outside a snare line described them as demons that stole children. He had sat in other meetings with women who had watched poachers shoot a silverback in front of a whole troop and then begged the sanctuary not to release any survivors nearby, because gunmen always came back. Nkuba was built for rehab and protected living, not spectacle. No public feeding shows, no photo sessions, no touching. Animals arrived broken by trafficking and either moved into long-term managed forest blocks or stayed under permanent care if release risked recapture. It was slow work, expensive work, and politically inconvenient work, especially for officials who wanted quick, visible solutions to complex fear. At 8:30, Todd walked into the administrative hut for a funding call and found board chair Madeleine Ngolo already waiting on speakerphone with someone from the province. "We have concerns," said a clipped male voice from the tinny laptop speaker. "Your protocols appear overly sentimental." Todd sat, expression neutral. He knew that phrase. Ngolo gave him a warning glance. "Mr. Cooper, the Deputy Minister is referencing your refusal to authorize aversive conditioning tools." "He means electric prods," Todd said. A pause. "Call them what you want," the Deputy Minister replied. "If nearby communities feel threatened, we cannot defend methods that treat dangerous animals as children." Todd kept his tone even. "No one here treats gorillas as children. We treat traumatized wildlife as wildlife. Punishment increases volatility. Predictability reduces it. And if predictability fails, then we have containment, sedation, and trained response." Ngolo tapped her pen on the table. "All of which require funding we currently don't have in full." There it was, always circling back to money. Todd left that meeting with no new money, 2 new reporting requirements, and a message from stores that the Trank cartridges were down to 1 case. He stepped back into the rain-thick air and saw Safi again, now in the rear run of Habitat C, squatting over a drainage trench. She plucked a pebble from the mud, rinsed it in a puddle, and tucked it against her abdomen before moving off. He watched her go and felt, without being able to explain it, that she was rehearsing for something. At 5:12 the next morning, before first light fully broke, Aline screamed. Todd was halfway across the compound before she screamed again. This time, his name. He reached Habitat C and found her frozen at the inner service gate. One gloved hand pressed hard to her mouth. The sliding hatch from holding to sleeping bay stood half open. Inside, Safi's nest was empty. Not disturbed. Empty. The leaves were arranged with the same careful weave as always, a shallow bowl pressed by weight that was no longer there. In the center of that bowl lay 27 smooth pebbles set in a tight oval, each stone almost touching the next. Not a random scatter, not play, a boundary. For one disorienting beat, Todd thought of burial mounds he had seen in old village cemeteries. Low earth rings, deliberate and small. He forced his gaze away and checked the locks. Outer padlock secure, bolt intact. Inner transfer hatch manual latch unseated. "When did you last see her?" he asked. "Night check, 2200, Aline said, voice shaking. "She nested normally. She took 2 stones to bed. This morning, this. I did not open this hatch, Todd, I swear." "I know." Doctor. Imani Mbala arrived at a jog, coat half-zipped, hair wrapped in a scarf she had clearly tied while running. "What happened?" "Unknown exit through transfer hatch," Todd said. "No blood, no signs of struggle." Imani's eyes dropped to the stones. Her face hardened. "Count?" 27. She crouched, not touching. She arranged them. Todd was already on his radio. "Control, lock all perimeter gates, no vehicle exits, check thermal at south fence now." The answer crackled back. "Generator tripped at 0341 for 1 minute 36. Camera loop interrupted. We're pulling backup battery feed." Todd swore under his breath and headed for surveillance. In the monitor room, rain static fuzzed one corner of the screen where moisture had crept into a cable. The timeline stuttered past midnight. 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. At 3:41, everything went black for a blink too long. Then, grainy infrared returned. Habitat C service corridor, empty. Then motion at the transfer line. A dark shape, low and purposeful. Safi slipped through the unlatched hatch into the maintenance run, paused once as if listening, and moved along the wall until she vanished into a blind spot by the feed shed. 4 minutes later, another camera caught her at the secondary fence, where a storm-fallen branch had bent the upper wire just enough for a strong body to force through. By 3:49, she was in secondary forest. By 4:10, she was gone. Nkuba had emergency protocol for escapes, but protocol looked clean on laminated cards and chaotic in rain with radios sputtering and staff breathing too fast. They initiated warning calls to surrounding villages and schools in the possible movement arc. They alerted Wildlife Authority dispatch. They pulled the sedation kit. Cato, their best tracker, was summoned from his cousin's farm 2 ridges away. At 7:03, the provincial administrator called. Todd took it on speaker in the operations hut while Imani and Ngolo listened. "You are now in official recovery window," the administrator said without greeting. "Given proximity to farms, 2 schools and a logging camp, provincial security is authorized to deploy armed patrols." Todd gripped the edge of the table. "She is a stressed female, not an attacking male. We can recover non-lethally. If she enters a populated area and someone is harmed, responsibility will be yours. I accept operational responsibility. You have 48 hours, Mr. Cooper. After that, shoot-on-sight authority activates for public safety." The line clicked dead. No one spoke for a moment. Rain hammered the roof hard enough to blur thought. Ngolo was first. 48 hours is not negotiable. Imani looked at Todd. "If armed teams go in first, she won't understand warnings. She'll display. They'll panic." Todd nodded once. His throat felt scraped raw. "Then they don't go in first." By 9, the sanctuary gate was crowded with voices. 2 motorcycle riders from Kisalala wanted guarantees their children could still walk to class. A farmer demanded compensation in advance for any crop damage. Someone had already posted a blurred screenshot from the camera footage online with the caption, "Giant Ape Escapes and Cuba Cage." A radio host in town called it a test of government seriousness. Seriousness lately meant rifles. Todd stood on a plastic chair under the awning and addressed the crowd with a loudhailer while mud crept over his boots. "Listen to me," he said. "Safi has not attacked anyone here. She is likely moving away from noise. Keep children in groups. Do not approach if seen. Do not throw stones. Call this number immediately." "Why keep such beasts at all?" someone shouted. Another voice. "Because whites and city people like projects." Todd let that pass. "Because traffickers take infants and kill families, and if we do nothing, there will be more gunmen in your forest, not fewer." Murmurs rolled through the rain. An older woman near the front lifted her chin. "If soldiers shoot her, will there be revenge from her kind?" Imani stepped beside Todd and took the loudhailer gently. "Gorillas are not spirits. They are animals under stress. Help us avoid a shooting by giving us information fast." That landed better than Todd's answer might have. Back inside operations, Cato arrived soaked, carrying a cut branch and a canvas satchel of tracking flags. He was lean, quiet, and had eyes that mapped terrain faster than most people read signs. "You called," he said. Todd pointed to the map spread over the table. Circles drawn around streams, farms, old logging roads. Likely movement east-southeast if she follows cover. Cato studied it, then shook his head. If rain was heavy at dawn, she may take ridge route above Old Kiln Trail. Less scent wash. Imani opened the medical case. "I can sedate at 20 meters if she gives me flank or shoulder. Not in heavy brush. Not if patrols start firing." Ngolo folded a document and slid it toward Todd. "Board emergency authorization. It allows tranquilizer drones and, if necessary, lethal force approval in case of charge. Sign now so we're covered." Todd read the lines once, then again. Language polished to sound reasonable, ending in a sentence that made his stomach turn. "Field commander may escalate to terminal intervention at discretion of security partner." He pushed the paper back. "No." Ngolo's jaw tightened. "This is not idealism hour, Todd. It is liability hour." Then give me a different form. He looked at her steadily. One granting me 12 hours lead for non-lethal recovery with designated team. Me, Dr. Imani, Cato. If we fail to make contact by then, you can hand command to security. That is not enough protection. It's the only chance she has. Ngolo stared at him, calculating risk in money, reputation, and headlines. Finally, she pulled another folder from her bag. Personal assumption of liability. If anything happened in that lead window, injury, property damage, escalation, he would carry direct legal burden. Sign this, she said. Todd signed. By noon, the first government patrol truck arrived at the outer gate anyway. 6 officers with rifles wrapped in plastic against the rain. Their commander, Sergeant Ilunga, was professional and not unkind, which somehow made him more frightening. I don't want to shoot your gorilla, Ilunga told Todd, standing under the dripping eave. But if she charges my men near a school, I will do my job. I know, Todd said. Give us the lead window. Ilunga checked his watch. You have until dusk. Not 12 hours. Less. Todd took what he could get. He and Imani strapped on packs. Dart gun, medkit, ropes, glucose solution, radio batteries, marker tape. Cato smeared fresh mud on his palms and knelt by the damaged secondary fence where Safi had exited. He touched a bent strand of wire, then the ground beyond. Here, he said softly. A print in the softened earth, already blurring under drizzle. 4 broad knuckles, deep pressure on the right side, exactly where Safi favored after old injury. Todd crouched beside him. For a second, the noise of the compound receded, the arguments, the engines, the ticking clock. And there was only that impression in mud, proof she was still out there and moving under her own will. Imani shouldered her pack. We bring her back alive, she said. Todd looked once toward Habitat C, where 27 stones sat in an empty nest, like a question no one had asked in time. Then he rose, and the 3 of them stepped into the wet green dark before the rifles did. The forest swallowed them in 20 steps. Behind them, the sanctuary noise thinned into a dull metal echo. Gate chains, one shouted order, the cough of a truck engine. And ahead, there was only wet leaf light and the soft percussion of rain ticking down through layers of canopy. Cato moved first, bent slightly, not hurrying and never fully stopping. Todd followed with a map case strapped flat to his chest. Imani came last, protecting the dart rifle under a poncho she had slit and retied so she could shoulder it quickly. Cato raised 2 fingers and crouched beside a patch of bent Marantaceae leaves. She passed here before full light, he whispered. Heavy body, no pause. Todd saw it then, a shallow, broad depression in red mud where a foot had slid downhill and recovered. Not panic, purpose. They pushed along an animal trail that braided into an old logging cut, now mostly reclaimed by saplings and thorn vine. Rusted cable rose from the ground in places like dead snakes. The rain had blurred everything older than an hour, but every few hundred meters Cato found something fresh. Broken fern stems at shoulder height, stripped pith from a wild celery stalk, a smear on bark where wet black hair had brushed. At 10:17, Todd's radio hissed. Operations to Cooper. Possible sighting near Kisalala School Road. Confirm? Todd looked at Cato, who shook his head before Todd even answered. No alarm calls. No distant shouting. Negative confirm, Todd said into the mic. We're still on active sign east-southeast ridge. Hold patrol positions. A second voice cut in. Sergeant Ilunga, clipped and controlled. Mr. Cooper, my unit cannot hold indefinitely on contradictory reports. You start sweeping with rifles. You drive her blind, Todd said. Give me movement freedom. Static. Then 2 hours. Cato exhaled through his nose and rose again. An hour later, they reached a narrow stream crossing where the current ran coffee-brown and fast from the night storm. On a flat rock in the middle, impossible to miss against slick black stone, sat a single pale river pebble. Imani stopped first. That wasn't here naturally. Cato stepped into the stream, balanced, examined without touching. Placed after Rain Peak, not washed. Todd felt a small, tight knot form under his ribs. Safi had crossed here. She had paused long enough to put a marker where human eyes could catch it. Could be coincidence, Imani said, but she was already scanning both banks. 10 meters downstream, Cato found a snare line anchored to a sapling, loop open and empty. The wire had been twisted apart by force, not cut with pliers. Nearby, shallow gouges scored the bark where something powerful had yanked and torqued. He looked up at Todd. She pulled this. Todd crouched beside the ruined loop. That snare wasn't set for gorilla. Probably duiker. Doesn't matter, Imani said. It catches whatever enters. Todd took a flag from Cato's satchel and marked the tree. He did not say what all three of them were thinking. Safi had not only escaped, she was interfering with traps. They climbed again, following old tire ruts now turned to channels of moving mud. At the edge of a clearing choked with elephant grass, Cato raised his hand sharply. He pointed to a stump at waist height. Another pebble. Smooth, deliberately centered. The pattern repeated through noon. One pebble on a cut log, one on a termite mound, one on the split root of a fallen iroko. Never hidden, never random. Each within sight of another abandoned snare point. Some sprung, some still baited, some torn out of the ground altogether with roots exposed. By the time they broke for 3 minutes under a buttress route to drink from canteens, Todd had 12 marker points on his map, and mud up to his knees. Imani wiped rain from her eyebrows with a shaking wrist. She is leading or warning. I can't tell which. Both, Todd said. You sound certain. I'm trying to be. His radio vibrated against his vest and burst alive with overlapping voices. Operations, a village contact, then Ngolo demanding update. He keyed in. Go one at a time. Ngolo 1. Todd, the board-approved temporary drone request. We can have 1 unit airborne by late afternoon if weather opens. No drones, he said. We are losing political ground by the hour. She is placing trail markers. She's at snare sites. A pause long enough to hear rain hammering leaves near the microphone. Did you say markers? Yes, pebbles. Deliberate placement. Document everything, Ngolo said immediately, board chair pragmatism snapping into place. Photo, coordinates, timestamps. If this goes public, we need evidence before people call it your interpretation. Noted. And Todd, Ilunga just informed us District Command is reconsidering your lead window. Of course they are. He clicked off before she could hear what he muttered next. By early afternoon, the rain shifted from steady to violent. Wind shouldered through the canopy, shaking down whole sheets of water. Track edges vanished as they watched. Cato lost sign twice and had to cast in widening half circles, reading bent grass and broken spiderweb lines instead of prints. Once he knelt for nearly 5 full minutes beside a patch of leaf litter, then pointed to a tiny dark pellet half dissolved by rain. Gorilla dung, less than 6 hours, fibre high, no fruit. She's not foraging normally. Imani leaned in. Stress transit. They moved faster. At 1440, as they skirted an eroded logging embankment, a shot cracked somewhere downslope. All three dropped instinctively. Birds exploded out of a nearby fig tree. Todd snatched his radio. Who fired? Who fired? Ilunga answered first. Warning discharge only. My rear team's startled movement near Cassava Field. False contact. Todd closed his eyes briefly. No more warning shots. You are not in active engagement zone. I decide engagement if civilians are threatened. Civilians are threatened by bullets too. Ilunga did not reply. Kato was already back on his feet, face unreadable, but his voice had sharpened. If she heard that, she'll divert. She did. The next leg of sign veered hard off the logging line into secondary growth so dense they had to cut through lianas with a parang. Progress slowed to a crawl. Todd's forearms burned. Imani stumbled once and swore as a thorn tore her sleeve. Leeches found their boots and wrists. Every 30 minutes the radio brought another rumour. Safi in a banana grove. Safi at a river ferry. Safi standing on two legs and beating a roof. None confirmed. By 1605 they reached a shallow ravine where runoff had carved raw channels through clay. Cato slid down first, then froze. "Come," he said quietly. At the bottom, under the overhang of exposed roots, lay a neat row of wire snares, 26 by Todd's count, each one bent open or snapped at the twist point. Beside them, also in a row, sat 26 pebbles. Not scattered, aligned. Imani whispered the number as if saying it too loudly would break something. 26. Todd's pulse thudded in his ears. In Safi's nest there had been 27 in an oval. Here were 26, beside 26, dead traps. "She counted them," he said. Cato nodded once, and brought them together for us to see. Rainwater streamed over the wire, making each loop shine briefly, then dull again. Todd photographed everything with shaking hands, geotagged the ravine, and sent the packet to Operations and Ngolo with 3 words. Pattern confirmed. Intentional. The reply came less than a minute later, not from Ngolo but from District Command routed through Ilunga. All units converge grid E7. Armed escort to assume lead for final contact. Todd stared at the message, then keyed his mic hard enough his thumb hurt. Negative. Repeat, negative. This site indicates cognitive sequencing and non-aggressive trail communication. We proceed quiet. Ilunga's voice arrived cold. Your argument is academic. Daylight is ending. My orders changed. Todd looked at Imani and Kato. Dusk in this forest fell fast. In 40 minutes, visibility would collapse. If armed teams swept now, every snapped branch would sound like threat. He made a decision he would probably regret in court. "Sergeant, patch me to Command Legal," he said. Silence, then static. Then a new voice introduced herself from Provincial Legal Affairs. Todd spoke before anyone could interrupt. "I am requesting extension of non-lethal lead under personal indemnity. Addenda, any injury or property loss within extension attributable to escaped guerrilla movement prior to armed contact falls under my signed liability, unless caused by unauthorized weapons discharge by state personnel." Imani turned to him, alarm clear even through mud and rain. "Todd." He held up a hand. The legal voice came back careful and dry. "You understand you are increasing personal, civil and criminal exposure?" "I understand." "Extension requested for how long?" "Until 2000. Ilunga cut in immediately. "Unacceptable." Todd didn't look at him. He couldn't, not through a radio. "Then 1900, 1 hour and 50 minutes. Long pause. Rain. Distant thunder. "Conditional," Legal finally said. "Digital acceptance required. You will receive form now." His phone buzzed with a document. Even in the rain he could read enough. It was ruin in legal language. He signed with a wet fingertip. Imani watched him tuck the phone away. "If this goes wrong, so it was already going wrong." Cato pointed upslope. "Talk later. Light is leaving." They climbed out of the ravine and followed a narrow contour path toward a ridge locals called Kilima Charmakar, Charcoal Hill, because old kilns had pocked its flanks years ago. The forest changed as they ascended. Fewer broadleaf giants, more scrub and secondary poles, charred stumps hidden under moss. Human history clung here in small scars. Collapsed shelters, boot prints fossilized in dried clay under overhangs where rain hadn't reached, empty salt packets half buried. At 1732, they found the first fresh sign of other people, a cigarette butt still dry under a rock shelf. Cato sniffed it, grimaced. Not old. This week, maybe today. Poachers? Imani asked. Could be charcoal burners, could be both. Ahead, half concealed by creepers, stood the rusted frame of an old camera trap strapped to a tree at chest height. Its lens was muddy but intact. Todd touched it gently. Ours? Cato squinted at the faded paint mark. Wildlife Authority. Older model. Imani checked the housing. Battery dead. Todd dug in his pack and found a spare universal pack and cable. If the card survived, we might get something. While he worked, the forest dimmed from green to lead-grey. Night insects started their electric whine. Cato ranged 10 meters in widening arcs, reading ground and listening. Twice he signaled stillness as distant voices floated up the slope, men speaking Lingala, too far to pass words. The camera screen flickered, then steadied. Todd pulled the SD card, slotted it into his field tablet, and opened the most recent files. Image timestamps rolled by in grainy monochrome. Civet, rain, empty trail, porcupine. 2 men carrying sacks at 3:12 3 nights ago. Empty, empty. Then Safi. Not once. Repeatedly. At 17:01 yesterday, she entered frame from north, moved off right. At 17:22, she came back, paused, looked downslope, and gave a posture Todd knew. Head forward, lips closed, low chest vibration. Contact call. At 17:49, she returned again, sat, and did it longer. No chest beat display, no threat. Waiting behavior. The files from 2 days prior showed the same loop. Arrive, sit near outer frame point, low call, leave, return at dusk. Again. Imani leaned over his shoulder. She's not wandering. She has a destination. Cato pointed beyond the camera's right edge. There's an old kiln pit there, covered now. Todd's mind jumped backward to the nest oval, to 27 stones, to the ravine row of 26. One unresolved location, he said. 27th. A branch snapped downhill. All 3 turned. Through brush, maybe 30 meters away, a dark shape moved low and slow between trunks. Not a man. Broader through shoulders, wet fur catching the little light left. Safi stopped in a window of open understory and looked straight toward them. Todd lowered himself deliberately, palms visible, the old feeding cue in his throat, but unsounded. Safi, he said softly, barely air. She did not charge, did not display. She looked past him, toward the slope below the camera, then gave that same low, pulsing contact call from the footage. Once, twice, a third time, longer. Then she turned and moved downslope, stopping after 5 meters to glance back as if checking they followed. Imani whispered, "She's leading us." They went after her without speaking, sliding through wet brush toward the concealed depression Cato had mentioned. The pit was almost invisible until they were on top of it, an old charcoal burn cavity roofed with branches and black plastic, camouflaged under leaf litter. A slit vent on one side leaked a chemical stink, sedative, urine, rot. Todd dropped to his knees and pulled back the plastic. Inside, in the cramped dark, lay a juvenile gorilla curled against the wall, ribs showing, eyes half open and glassy with dehydration. Beside him, two chimpanzees in rope harnesses lay on their sides, breathing shallowly, dart punctures fresh on one thigh and one shoulder. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Then Imani was already in the pit, voice hard and clinical. Alive, all alive. Todd, lights. Cato, cut those restraints now. Above them, on the rim, Safi sat in the rain and gave one more low contact call into the deepening dark, as if answering someone who hadn't answered in a very long time. Above them, on the rim, Safi sat in the rain and gave one more low contact call into the deepening dark, as if answering someone who hadn't answered in a very long time. Todd snapped back into motion first. "Ops, this is Cooper," he said into the radio, forcing each word clean. "Priority red. We have confirmed live trafficking victims at grid K11, Charcoal Hill Kiln Line. Repeat, live juvenile gorilla, 2 sedated chimpanzees. Needs silent containment and veterinary extraction team. Silent." He emphasized the last word like a prayer. Imani was cutting rope with a scalpel, hands steady despite the tremor in her breath. "Chimps are heavily dosed," she said. "Likely ketamine mix, maybe acepromazine. Respirations shallow but regular. Juvenile's conscious level fluctuating. Severe dehydration." "Can they move?" Todd asked. "Not yet." Cato crouched at the edge of the pit, scanning the dark between trees. "We are not alone," he murmured. Fresh boot tracks upslope. 2, maybe 3 men circling, not entering. Todd's radio cracked before he could answer. Ilunga's voice came hard and immediate. "Cooper, hold position. My unit and district police are inbound. We will secure scene." "Negative loud approach," Todd said. "If smugglers are nearby, you spook them and they scatter. We need perimeter containment. No lights, no gunfire." A different voice barged in, district command, strained by static and authority. "This is now a criminal operation scene. You are to maintain visual and await armed takeover." Todd looked at the animals in the pit, a juvenile gorilla barely lifting its head, 2 chimpanzees tied like cargo. Evidence, yes. But alive first, evidence second. "If armed takeover means flashlights and shouted commands," he said, "you'll trigger panic. We have a habituated adult female at rim. She is calm now. Keep it that way." No answer. Then Ngolo, clipped and urgent. "Todd, media monitors are picking up chatter about trafficking. Province wants visible action." Visible action. Todd almost laughed. "Visible action gets someone killed," he said. He lowered the radio and met Cato's eyes. "How long before whoever owns this pit comes back?" Cato listened to the forest for 3 silent seconds. "If pickup was planned at dark, they are already close." Rain intensified, drumming plastic and leaves. Safi shifted on the rim, watching Imani's hands. Every few breaths she gave that low contact rumble. Not to threaten, not to claim, but to anchor herself in sound. Todd climbed halfway into the pit and shone his headlamp low. Crates, sedation syringes, feed sacks labelled as charcoal supplies. This was no opportunistic snare camp. It was a transfer node. Organized. He keyed the radio again. "Command, listen carefully. This is an active trafficking handoff point. If you flood this hill with armed teams, we lose suspects and maybe animals. Put rangers on downstream roads now. Quiet checkpoint on the Mibali crossing and Old Timber Bridge. Do it." Ilunga responded this time, slower. "Checkpoint request acknowledged, but district police are already moving uphill from South Trail." Todd swore softly. South Trail was the same approach smugglers would use with pack loads or a truck rendezvous. "What are their light status?" "White lamps." "Turn them off." "I do not command district police." That was the escalation in one sentence. Too many uniforms, too many chains of command, nobody fully in charge. Cato slid down beside Todd and pointed at the mud floor. "See this?" Parallel grooves cut through the clay from one corner toward the back wall, then vanished under a collapse of brush and ash. Something heavy had been dragged recently, crate-sized. Todd frowned. Could be feed box. Could be another cage, Cato said. Before Todd could probe further, voices rose from downslope, faint, male, arguing in Lingala. Not police cadence, different rhythm. Smugglers or scouts. Cato's hand went to Todd's forearm. They heard radio traffic. Todd tasted metal in his mouth. If the traffickers reached the pit and saw armed officers converging, they could shoot the captives, torch the site, or run with whatever remained hidden. What he had built in 12 soaked hours, Safi's trust line, the non-lethal lead, a narrow gap between fear and bullets, was now balancing on bad communication and, worse, ego. He spoke low, rapid. Cato, perimeter watch east and south. No engagement unless direct threat. Imani, stabilize and prep for emergency move. I'll hold command off as long as I can. Imani looked up, rainwater running down her jaw. You can't hold all of them. No, Todd said. Just long enough. They tried to move anyway. Imani inserted an intraosseous line into the juvenile's tibia because peripheral veins had collapsed. She hung warmed fluids from a branch hook improvised with paracord. The little gorilla flinched weakly, then sagged. Name later, she said through clenched teeth. Breathing now. Todd and Cato fashioned a sling stretcher from poles and a tarp. On 3 counts, they lifted the juvenile to test transfer weight. The body was lighter than it should have been, hollow with starvation, but every jolt spiked respiratory effort. No more than 30 meters at a time, Imani warned. Any faster, and he crashes. They shifted to the chimpanzees. One came around enough to thrash blindly, teeth flashing, then dropped back into chemical fog. The other remained limp, except for shallow chest movement. Can't reverse safely in field, Imani said. If we use antagonist drugs now and they seize, we lose them. Todd nodded, though each answer narrowed options. He called ops for a stealth extraction corridor. Instead, his screen lit with a legal update. Emergency command transferred to Provincial Security Joint Unit effective immediately. Cooper to comply. Non-compliance subject to detention. Detention at the pit, with animals tied in mud. He laughed once, short and joyless. Ilunga came online seconds later, voice tight with apology he couldn't afford to say aloud. Todd, District Chief is on site below me. He orders immediate show of force sweep. I advised caution. Then advise harder, Todd snapped. You have sedated wildlife and unknown suspects in the same grid. Orders stand. A white beam suddenly sliced through trees to their left, then another from downslope. Shouts followed. Boots in wet leaves. Safety clicks from rifles being checked in the dark. Safi exploded upright on the rim and gave a sharp bark huff Todd had only heard when new keepers moved too quickly near her sleeping bay. She chest beat once, warning, not charge, but the sound boomed in the confined hollow like a drum of thunder. Lights off, Todd shouted toward the trees. Lights off now. No one listened quickly enough. The nearest officer, silhouette jittering behind his own flashlight, jerked back and raised his rifle instinctively towards Safi's movement. Todd lunged up the pit wall and shoved the barrel down before the shot could break. Don't you dare, he hissed. For a suspended second they were face to face, rain running off both of them, the officer breathing hard behind fogged lenses. Then Ilunga's voice cut through from somewhere behind. Weapon low! Weapon low! The rifle lowered, but the damage was done. Safi dropped from the rim and vanished into brush with 2 crashing bounds, silent after the first impact. Gone. Todd stood frozen, hand still on the officer's barrel, feeling the empty space where her presence had held the whole hill together. Cato appeared at his shoulder. "She'll circle," he said, but he didn't sound certain. Below, in the pit, the juvenile's monitor alarm shrilled. A weak pulse ox, clipped to ear tissue now dropping. Imani shouted, "Todd, he's desatting!" He slid back down. Juvenile respiration had become irregular, with long pauses between shallow pulls. Imani bagged him with a pediatric mask and improvised valve, jaw set, eyes bright with fury. "Move attempt is over," she said. "He cannot travel now. We stay and treat or he dies." That was the setback. They were pinned to the trafficking site, with command broken, smugglers near, Safi displaced, and a child dying by inches. Nothing about it could be fixed in one clever choice. Todd keyed his radio, voice hoarse. "All units, hold your positions and kill beams. You have a critical veterinary intervention in progress." District Command answered with contempt, disguised as procedure. "Scene is unsafe. Withdraw and let tactical clear." Todd looked at the juvenile's ribcage fluttering under wet fur, at the chimps still bound with rope burns, at Imani's hands pumping breath into a body that should have been clinging to a mother in canopy light, not lying in charcoal mud. "No," he said. For the first time all day, Imani forgot to be composed. She kept one hand sealing the mask over the juvenile's muzzle and used the other to steady the fluid line. And in the narrow wedge between tasks, she felt panic crawl up her spine like cold water. Not now. Not again. The forest around her blurred to fragments. Todd's voice above arguing with men who loved command more than outcomes. Cato's soft footfalls at the perimeter. Rain striking plastic in relentless code. Under her palms, the juvenile's breath stuttered, resumed, stuttered. She had seen this slope before. Different hill, different year, same pressure. Move faster, clear the scene. Do it now because officials are watching. At 28, she had been a junior vet on a confiscation convoy outside Bukavu. Armed escort, live primates, bad road, everybody shouting. A bonobo infant had gone hypotensive in the truck. She asked for 10 minutes to warm and stabilize. The commander gave her 3. She dosed for transport instead of treatment because 3 minutes was what power allowed. The infant seized 40 minutes later and died before sunrise. People told her it wasn't her fault. Logistics, heat, prior trauma. But fault did not care about committee language. Fault lived in memory. Tiny fingers flexing once against her glove, then still. She had promised after that never to let urgency masquerade as care again. Now urgency had Todd's face in profile at the pit edge. Mud-smeared, furious, refusing to yield while the world pressed rifles into every gap. She loved him. She had not said it plainly because plain truths were dangerous in places where tomorrow might be a body bag or a transfer order. But she loved the way he listened to animals longer than he listened to men with titles. She loved his stupid, costly insistence that fear was not a management plan, and she was terrified that same insistence would get him shot. "Breathe," she whispered to the juvenile, though she was speaking to herself too. A hand touched her shoulder. Todd, crouching now, voice lowered from command to human. "Talk to me." She didn't look up. If she did, she might break in front of him, and she needed her hands to stay exact. "His perfusion is bad. I can buy time, not miracles." She swallowed hard. "And if they rush this site, I can't monitor all 3. I lose one, maybe more." "You won't." "Don't do that." She finally met his eyes. Rain clung to his lashes. "Don't give me certainty you don't have." He went still. She took one shaking breath and gave him what she almost never gave anyone. "I killed one before, Todd. Not by malice, by obedience. I followed a timeline built by men who never touched the patient. I will not do that again." He absorbed it without flinching, and that mercy hurt more than denial. "I should have told you," she said. "You're telling me now." "I'm telling you because if this turns and you decide to stand in front of another rifle, I need you to understand I can't treat dead ideals. I can treat living bodies, yours included." Something softened and sharpened in him at once. He nodded once, small and fierce. "Then we keep bodies living," he said. Cato dropped into the pit opening, breath controlled but urgent. Movement south trail. 4 men, no uniforms, one carrying long gun wrapped in tarp. They are not police. Imani closed her eyes for half a second, then reopened them and adjusted the flow rate. No miracles, just the next correct action. The hill became a trap of converging intentions. From the north, Ilunga's patrol trying to hold discipline while district officers pushed for a sweep. From the south, 4 smugglers climbing toward the kiln with practiced quiet. In the middle, Todd's team in a hole with 3 compromised animals and an adult gorilla somewhere in the dark, displaced and hyper-alert. Todd switched to ranger frequency and got through to a wildlife unit captain he trusted. "Captain Bemba, this is Cooper at Charcoal Hill," he whispered. "Smuggler team inbound South Trail. Can you seal Mibale crossing in 10? "Already moving," Bemba said. "But district police radioed open operation. Smugglers may divert." "Then close Timber Bridge too." Trying. Trying was all anyone had. Ilunga appeared at the edge of the pit moments later, rain streaming off his helmet, 2 officers behind him with rifles angled low but ready. His face was carved from duty and frustration. "You have 5 minutes, he told Todd quietly. "District chief wants a loud call out in advance. I can delay only so long." "If you call out, they bolt or fire," Todd said, "and your men fire back over sedated animals." Ilunga's jaw tightened. "I know, but if I disobey direct order in front of district police, I lose command entirely." From downslope came a whistle, 3 short notes answered by 1 long. Smuggler signal. Cato hissed from the brush. "They're at lower terrace." At the same instant, a district officer on the north line shouted, "Contact movement right flank," and snapped his weapon up toward a shadow passing between trunks. The shadow was Safi. She emerged 10 meters from the pit, huge in the strobing beams, rain slicking her shoulders. She did not charge. She planted, gave 2 explosive huffs, and chest beat hard enough to vibrate the wet air. Every rifle in view twitched upward as if pulled by string. Todd stepped out of the pit and into the open line between Safi and the muzzles. "Hold!" he roared. "Hold your fire!" For 1 knife-thin second, everything balanced. Officers with fingers tightening, smugglers closing from below, Imani breathing for a juvenile in the mud, Cato somewhere in the dark trying to watch both flanks, and Safi staring not at Todd, not at the guns, but past them into deeper brush, as if something there mattered more than all of them. Then, from downslope, an engine coughed once to life on the old logging track, and someone, police or smuggler, Todd couldn't tell, clicked off a safety. The safety clicked off with a sound too small for the damage it could do. "Down!" Ilunga shouted. No one moved down. Everyone locked. Safi's chest was heaving, rain running in dark ropes off her forearms. The district officer nearest Todd had his rifle half raised, muzzle trembling between Safi and the brush below. From downslope came another engine cough and the scrape of tires in mud. Someone trying to bring a vehicle closer on an old logging spur. Then a man's voice rose from the south terrace. Not police, not ranger. "Biba Haraka, move it!" Cato yelled from the dark. "Smugglers on the trail." The moment shattered. Todd lifted both hands, one toward Safi, one toward the rifles. "Hold fire, she's not charging." A flashlight beam swung wild, struck Safi's face, and she bark-huffed hard. 2 explosive blasts. The district officer flinched and shouldered his weapon. Imani came up out of the pit with mud to her elbows and fury in her voice. "If you shoot now, you hit me first." She stepped in front of the muzzle long enough to force the barrel down. "I have a crashing juvenile in there. You fire into this hollow and you kill 3 sedated animals and your own case." "Doctor, step aside," the officer snapped. "No." Todd swallowed the urge to shout and did the one thing Safi might still recognize through panic. He clicked his tongue twice, low and rhythmic, then gave the old feeding cue he used in quarantine. A breathy 2-note call, almost a hum. "How, how." Safi's head jerked toward him. He took 2 slow steps left, opening a clean lane between her and the gun line. "Good girl," he said quietly. "Here, with me. Ha-oo." Below, something metallic clanged. A smuggler had reached the lower lip of the kiln and hit loose wire. Kato crashed through brush and tackled him before he could climb. Another man behind him shouted and fired once uphill, wide, a muzzle flash in leaves. Now everybody started yelling. "Contact! Southside contact!" "Don't shoot into the pit!" "Lights left! Lights left!" Ilunga shoved between 2 district officers and bellowed, "My command, weapons low unless clear hostile target." Todd kept backing, eyes on Safi. "Ha-oo, come on." She took 1 step after him, then another, still keyed and vibrating with tension. Her gaze kept flicking downslope toward the voices. Not fleeing. Watching. Imani moved beside Todd, dart rifle up, but pointed down. "I need a flank at 15 meters, she said through her teeth. "Not while she's front-facing." "Wait," Todd said. "1 more step." From the pit, the juvenile's monitor gave a long, descending alarm. Imani flinched but held. A district flashlight swung again, too bright, too sudden. Safi rose to full height and chest beat, booming across the hill. The same officer jerked his rifle up a second time. Todd stepped directly in front of the barrel. "No." The officer's finger tightened anyway. Ilunga slammed the barrel sideways at the instant the shot broke. The round tore bark off a tree and showered them with wet splinters. Silence fell for half a heartbeat. Stunned. Impossible silence. Then Safi dropped to all 4s and bounded not toward the gunfire but across Todd's line of sight, toward a thicket behind the kiln. Head angled, intent. She stopped at the edge, looked back once at him, and gave a short, urgent grunt. Not aggression. Summons. "She wants us there," Todd said. Imani snapped. "She wants something there." Todd pointed. "Now's your window." Imani pivoted, found Safi's shoulder as she quartered away, and fired. The dart struck high in the left thigh. Safi spun, slapped at it, gave 1 furious bark, then moved 3 paces deeper and sat, glaring, breath fast. Todd kept the cue low and steady. "Ha-oo, easy, easy." "Dose is conservative," Imani said. 8 to 10 minutes onset if stress doesn't burn it off." Gunfire cracked again downslope. 2 shots, then Kato shouting, "Runner! Runner East Trail!" Ilunga cursed and keyed his radio. "North unit cut East Trail. Non-lethal if possible. He's carrying cargo." Todd whipped toward Kato's voice. Through brush he saw 1 smuggler scrambling uphill with a plastic-wrapped crate hugged to his chest. Not big. Crate-sized for an infant. His stomach dropped. "The drag marks," he said. "There's another animal." He leapt the pit edge, slid in beside Imani, and grabbed the nearest chimp's harness. "Can you hold the juvenile solo?" "For 2 minutes." "Kato can't lose that crate." Todd hauled the chimp to the tarp, muscles screaming. Above, Ilunga and 1 ranger dropped into the pit and took the second chimp under Todd's orders without argument now. Imani kept bagging the juvenile, eyes never leaving his chest rise. "Go!" she shouted at Todd. "Bring me back whatever's in that box." Todd and Cato ran east into wet black undergrowth, headlamps off, following crash sounds and a trail of torn leaves. The runner was fast, fueled by panic, but burdened. Twice he slipped, recovered, kept going. Ahead, engine revs rose, the truck finding traction on the old spur. Cato hissed, "Cut him at the fallen cappock!" They split. Todd angled high, hit the track just as the smuggler burst out below him. The man saw him, swung the crate like a shield, and pulled a pistol from his waistband with the other hand. "Back off!" he shouted. "I shoot it and dump!" Todd froze, hands up. "You do that, you lose your money and your life. Put it down." Headlights blazed through rain as a pickup fishtailed into view 20 meters away. 2 men in the cab, one in the bed with a shotgun wrapped in tarp. The driver yelled, "Moke, throw and jump." So this was Moke, the name whispered in snare villages for a year and never pinned to a face. Moke backed toward the truck, pistol shaking. "You think gorilla worth dying for?" Todd heard boots crashing behind, Ilunga's unit closing, but too far. Moke could still climb in and vanish. Todd keyed his radio without looking down. "Bemba, this is Cooper. Smuggler vehicle departing Charcoal East Spur toward Mibali Crossing. Dark pickup, no plates. Intercept now." The man in the truck bed raised the shotgun. Cato moved first, silent, sudden, hurling his tracking pole low. It struck the shotgunman's knees. He toppled out of the bed into mud. The gun discharged into the ground with a deafening blast. Moke flinched and fired wild. The pistol shot tore leaves over Todd's shoulder. Todd lunged. They went down together in the mud, crate between them. Moke drove an elbow into Todd's throat, scrambled up, tried to kick free. Todd held the crate with both arms and rolled away as Ilunga's officers slammed into Moki and pinned him face first. The driver jammed the truck into reverse, wheels spinning. Cato was already at the door, dragging the man out by his shirt collar. The engine screamed, then died. Rain hammered all of them flat against the earth. Todd clutched the crate to his chest like it might dissolve. Inside, something tiny moved. Moke did not break when they cuffed him. He spat mud and blood, laughed once and said to Ilunga, "You arrest me. 3 others run. Tomorrow, same business." "Tomorrow you're in chains," Ilunga said. Moke turned his head toward Todd. "You're the ape man. You think this ends because you caught one truck?" He whistled, sharp and mocking. From somewhere farther downslope came an answering whistle. Faint, moving away. Scouts escaping. Todd's jaw clenched. Moke was right about one thing. Cells like this survived by redundancy. Lose one courier, use another route. Lose one cache, open 2. "Search him," Todd told Ilunga. They found 2 phones vacuum-sealed in plastic, a GPS tagger, and a folded notebook with coded columns. Weights, dates, initials, river points, trafficking ledger. Moke grinned through split lips. "Codes only. You read nothing." Cato took the notebook, flipped pages, and tapped a repeated symbol, small circle over slash, beside 7 entries. "Kiln mark," he said quietly to Todd. "Same as ash pit labels." Another symbol appeared beside one line only. Circle with 27 tiny dots around it. Todd felt his scalp prickle. That's tonight. He ripped the crate latch with numb fingers. Inside, under a soaked feed sack and 2 frozen gel packs, lay an infant gorilla no bigger than a house cat, chest barely moving, eyelids heavy with sedation. A cheap IV catheter dangled from one forearm, taped badly. 27th. Todd's vision tunneled. For a second, all he could hear was Safi's low dusk call from the camera trap, repeated and repeated. Imani's voice came through his radio, strained. "Todd, status." He swallowed. "Live infant recovered. Severe sedation. Bringing now." Moke twisted against the officers and barked a laugh. "Not live long." Ilunga hauled him upright by the collar. "You will shut your mouth." Moke kept smiling, defiant to the edge. "Ask your district chief who signed my timber papers." That landed like a dropped stone. One district officer visibly flinched. Todd looked from Moke to Ilunga. The sergeant's face hardened into something colder than anger. "Chain everyone at this vehicle," Ilunga ordered. "No one leaves, including uniforms, until Ranger Intelligence arrives." A district lieutenant protested. "You can't detain police on your own hill." "I can when evidence contamination is in progress," Ilunga snapped. "You want to contest? Call your chief on recorded line." The lieutenant shut up. Moke watched the fracture in command and tried one more lever. "You need me to decode roots," he said to Todd. "I talk only if I walk." Todd stood over him, rain in his eyes, infant crate in his arms. "You'll talk because we found your ledger, your cash, your animals, and your face at pickup. You lost your walk when you sedated a baby and boxed it with charcoal." For the first time, Moke's smile slipped. Not fear yet, but recalculation. Todd turned away before the man could recover it. Back at the pit, Safi was down on her side under a fig sapling, sedation finally taking hold. Her breathing was deep and regular. Imani knelt by her headlamp glow, one hand on carotid pulse, the other still managing the juvenile's oxygen with a ranger assisting. When Todd opened the crate and she saw the infant, her face changed in a way he had never seen in surgery or field triage. Shock, stripped to tenderness and rage in the same breath. "God," she whispered. She was calling for him. "No time," Todd said. "Can you stabilize both?" "I have to." She took the infant, checked pupils, mucosa, cap refill. "Heavy tranquilizer load, hypothermic, but he's alive." She looked up at Todd, rain and tears impossible to separate. "You were right to follow her line." He shook his head. "She was right. We finally listened." Above them, radios erupted. Captain Bemba confirming seizure of a second vehicle at Mibali, crossing with cages and sedatives. Names matching entries in Moke's ledger. One suspect attempting bribe on record. The network was not gone, but it was bleeding out in real time. Moke heard the transmissions from where he knelt, cuffed under guard, and stopped talking. They did not leave Charcoal Hill until near dawn. Extraction was slow, brutal, and precise. Juvenile gorilla in suspended sling with warmed fluids. 2 chimpanzees in padded transport nets. Infant in Imani's jacket against chemical heat packs. Safi on a monitored stretcher, once sedation was deep enough for safe move. Every 10 minutes, Imani called vitals into a recorder while Todd logged chain of custody evidence with Ilunga, because if even one timestamp broke, defense attorneys would feast. At the sanctuary gate, floodlights stayed off by Todd's order. No spectacle, only work. The infirmary smelled of disinfectant, wet fur and diesel heat from backup generators. A night shift keeper met them with blankets and a face gone white at the sight of the infant. "Is that—" "We don't know yet," Imani said. "We test, then we know." By noon, rain had thinned to a mist. By evening, blood work was running. The juvenile was rehydrating. One chimp had woken and was screaming for 3-minute bursts, then dropping exhausted. The other gripped a rope toy and stared at corners like they might open. Safi came out of sedation near 1900, groggy and disoriented. They had moved her into a recovery bay adjacent to the infant's incubator enclosure, separated by mesh and safety gap. Todd stood back, not crowding. Safi pushed herself upright, swayed, then fixed on the tiny body wrapped in fleece beyond the mesh. She gave a low, trembling rumble. The infant answered with a faint chirp. Safi pressed her palm flat against the mesh. The infant crawled, clumsy and half-sedated, until his fingers found the opposite side. No one in the room spoke for a long time. Ngolo arrived with 2 provincial officials just before midnight, shoes muddy, expression unreadable. She looked at Todd, then at the animals, then at the evidence boxes lined against the wall. "You disobeyed direct transfer," she said. "Yes. You also handed us the largest live trafficking seizure in this province in 9 years." Todd waited. She exhaled. "Legal will still review your liability signature, but District Command has bigger problems tonight." One official cleared his throat. Sergeant Ilunga filed an internal complaint naming interference from District Office in active wildlife trafficking case. The other added, "Captain Bemba's checkpoint bodycam recorded a suspect identifying payment channels. Names are inconvenient." Inconvenient. Todd almost smiled at the understatement. Imani came out of the lab with a printout in one gloved hand. "Preliminary mitochondrial match," she said, voice raw with exhaustion. "Infant shares maternal line with Safi. We'll confirm full panel, but this is strong." Ngolo's composure cracked for half a second. Her offspring. "Likely surviving offspring from prior poaching event," Imani said. Todd looked through the observation glass. Safi had curled around a nest of fresh leaves staff had rushed in from Habitat C. On the other side, the infant had finally stopped shivering. The 27 stones in her empty nest had not marked a grave after all. They had marked a route to the living. 3 nights later, after statements, seizures, emergency hearings, and exactly 41 minutes of sleep in 2 days, Todd found Imani on the infirmary roof walkway during a break in the rain. She was sitting on an overturned feed bin, boots off, toes flexing against cold metal. The forest beyond the fence breathed fog. Frogs were loud in the drainage ditch. Generator light painted one side of her face gold and left the other in shadow. He stopped a meter away. "You should be in bed. So should you." He held up 2 enamel mugs. "Compromise?" She took one. "If this is that awful instant coffee, I'm reporting you." They drank in silence long enough for the first easy breath. Either had taken all week. Imani set the mug down between her feet. "I heard legal cleared your liability exposure to administrative review only. No criminal referral." They needed me alive for testimony. "And because bodycam caught you preventing a bad shooting." He shrugged, uncomfortable. "Caught me being reckless. Caught you being exactly who you are." He looked at her then. "That worries you?" "It terrifies me," she said, and didn't soften it. "When you stepped in front of that rifle, I thought—" She stopped, jaw tightening. Started again. "I thought I was about to watch the same story with a different body. Someone good dies because people with guns and titles can't tolerate patience." Todd leaned against the rail, mug warming his palms. "I don't have a clean answer for that. I'm not asking for clean." Wind pushed mist across them. Somewhere below, an ape gave a soft night grunt. Imani rubbed her thumb over a scar on her wrist he'd never asked about. "I told you about Bukavu because I needed you to know why I fight you when you go martyr. I can live with hard choices. I can't live with performative sacrifice." He let that sit, then nodded. "Fair." She gave a tired laugh. "That's all you've got?" "No." He drew in breath. "I spent years telling myself boundaries were professionalism. Don't blur team lines. Don't complicate command. Don't need anyone too specifically." It sounded responsible. Mostly it was fear with paperwork. Imani turned, fully facing him now. "I need you too, specifically," he said. The words hung between them, simple and enormous. She looked down, then back up. "Say it plain, Todd. I love you." No flourish, no retreat. Not in a crisis-only way, not in a "we survived a bad night" way, in a waking up thinking about how you lift a scalpel way, in a wanting a life that includes your stubbornness way. Her mouth trembled once, then steadied. Good, she whispered, because I am done pretending this is professional concern. He almost smiled. What is it? It is love, she said, and it is inconvenient and risky and probably bad governance, and I don't care anymore. He laughed then, the first real laugh since the escape alarm, and some locked chamber in his chest gave way. She stood, stepped close enough that their knees touched. Terms, she said, because she was still herself. We do this honestly. No disappearing behind operations language. If one of us is spiraling, the other names it. If command conflicts with care, we argue it out before we bleed for it. Agreed. And you do not step in front of bullets unless there is truly no other move. He winced. Can't promise never. Then promise you'll look for one extra move first. He held her gaze. I promise. She nodded once, satisfied, then touched 2 fingers to his jaw where mud abrasion had scabbed. Also, for record, that feeding cue was absurdly gentle. It worked. It worked because she trusted you. He swallowed. Because we both listened. Imani leaned in and kissed him, slow, deliberate, rain cool and coffee warm. Not the frantic claim of survivors, but a decision. When they parted, she rested her forehead against his. Tomorrow we have hearings, donor calls, and a chimp that bites everyone except one senior keeper. Romantic. And tonight, she said, we have 20 minutes before someone radios us. He checked his watch theatrically. 19 now. Then stopped talking. They stayed on the walkway until the frogs quieted and the radio finally did call them back. And when they went downstairs, they went together, shoulder to shoulder, no longer pretending the space between them was empty. The provincial courtroom smelled of dust, fan oil, and wet wool from people who had waited in rain for seats. Todd sat at the witness table with a printed map spread before him. 27 points marked in blue grease pencil, each paired with photo evidence. On a screen behind him, camera trap stills cycled. Safi at dusk beside the concealed pit, then evidence bags, ledger pages, seizure photos from Mibali Crossing. Moke stood in the defendant enclosure, thinner now, eyes flat. Defense counsel tapped the map. Mr. Cooper, you claim an escaped guerrilla intentionally guided your team through these locations by placing stones. I documented stones at each snare site, time-stamped, Todd said. We found 26 cut snares beside 26 stones. The 27th location held live captives. Or your staff placed those stones to create narrative. Ilunga, seated behind prosecutors, made a noise that was almost a laugh. Todd didn't look away from counsel. Chain of custody footage includes district police arrival before site disturbance and continuous body cam afterward. Also, if we fabricated, we'd be admitting to tampering with a major crime scene. That would be counterproductive. A few people in the gallery snorted. Counsel pivoted. And this alleged infant relation to Safi? Imani took the stand after him and explained mitochondrial and microsatellite matches in patient language, sharp enough for judges and plain enough for villagers in the back row. She did not grandstand. She did not have to. When prosecutors played the checkpoint recording of Moke's associate naming payoff channels tied to district permits, one of the co-defendants lowered his face and started to cry. Moke stared straight ahead until verdict day. Guilty on trafficking, illegal possession, cruelty and conspiracy. Additional corruption inquiries opened before lunch. Outside the courthouse, microphones shoved close. Todd gave one statement only. This was not one heroic rescue. It was a team choosing restraint under pressure and local communities calling in real information. Beside him, Ngolo added, to everyone's surprise, the province is establishing a joint rapid response wildlife unit with non-lethal priority protocols. Nkuba will co-train. A reporter shouted, even after the escape? N'Golo did not blink, because of what the escape revealed. At Nkuba, the memorial garden went in on a bright morning after rain, just beyond the education path where school groups stopped for hand-washing stations. A senior keeper and 2 students from Maseki Primary carried river stones in a wooden crate. Kato set each into red earth in an oval. Not a grave shape this time, but an open ring with a gap at the east side for a path through. 27 stones, each tagged underneath with a date, site code, and species, if known. The older woman who had once asked Todd about guerrilla revenge stood watching with her grandson. She nodded at the ring. For those saved. And those lost before we reached them, Todd said. She considered that, then handed her grandson a small trowel. Place 1, she told him. In Habitat C, now rebuilt and reinforced, Safi worked at a nest platform while her infant, officially coded NK27 until naming protocols cleared, unofficially called Pendo by half the staff, climbed over her shoulder and stole leaves from the edge. She tolerated exactly 3 thefts, then gently pushed him into the nest bowl and resumed weaving. At dusk, Todd walked the perimeter with Imani. The forest sounded again like wet paper tearing open, same as the morning Safi disappeared, but he heard different things in it now. Not just threat, but signal. At the night gate he paused, hand on the latch. Inside, Safi gathered a few smooth pebbles from a corner drain. She turned them in her palm, then set one beside Pendo's curled body before settling around him. No oval, no counting line toward absence. Just 1 stone, and a child breathing against her chest. Todd closed the gate softly. Imani touched his arm. Ready? He looked once more through the mesh at mother and infant in the dim red light, then nodded. Yeah, he said. Now I am. They walked back through the damp dark toward the staff lights, the ring of 27 stones catching moonlight behind them, and the night held.